Westbrook. I am the host of the I Love Being Sober podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to provide educational content to people struggling with addiction, loved ones, family members, parents who have people in their lives that may or may not want to get clean and sober, and anybody that would like to learn more about recovery and what successful recovery looks like. Today, I'm joined by Robert Gruler, and Robert is the founding partner of R&R Law Group, a criminal defense law firm based in Scottsdale, Arizona. Robert and his team have helped thousands of people facing criminal charges, many stemming directly from substance abuse-related issues. After suffering a devastating personal loss in 2016, Robert came to terms with his own problems in alcohol and sought help. Today, Robert is actively involved in the 12 steps, providing workshops at treatment and recovery centers focused on substance abuse-related crimes and providing help to those suffering with addiction, and clearing their criminal records. For more information on Robert's workshops, please visit cleanslatesobriety.org. Robert is licensed to practice law in Arizona, California, the Federal District Court of Arizona, and the United States Supreme Court. Robert hosts a live show on YouTube called Watching the Watchers, where he monitors police and prosecutorial misconduct every week. Robert's new book, Beginning to Winning: How to Fight Your Case and Succeed in the Criminal Justice System, is available now on Amazon. Robert is also on the board of directors of a local nonprofit, 𝐟𝐸𝐿, an organization dedicated to helping those who have lost a loved one to drugs, alcohol, suicide, or tragic death. Robert, welcome to the show. I'm so grateful that you were able to carve some time out of your day to be here with us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Tim. I'm super excited that you're doing a podcast. I think you've got a lot of awesome things to share with the world, and I'm honored to be a part of it. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, we've known each other for a few years now, and I've seen you out in the world and providing your clean slate sobriety to lots of people early on in recovery. And you're helping them clean up their records. You're helping them have a clean slate so they can go out there and get a job and start their lives over. And I've seen you do a bunch of stuff, and it's been really, really cool to watch you. And I see you on social media, and I love your show, Watching the Watchers. You did a podcast series that was great. And you've got some other things that kind of led you to where you are today. And you're obviously passionate about helping people that are suffering from drug addiction and suicide and mental health. And so I guess let's kind of dig into your story a little bit and tell me a little bit about you and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, it was a long journey, man. And I appreciate, you reading that bio, that intro. I kind of crammed a lot in there. And then when it's funny when your life, like, it doesn't feel like a lot, but when you kind of compress it all into one paragraph, it's like, that's pretty good. But, it wasn't always like that for me. I started drinking when I was 12 years old in 5th grade. And as you mentioned, I do these clean slate sobriety talks. And when I go around to the different treatment centers, the workshop is kind of broken up into 2 parts. The first part of it is sort of a crash course on Arizona law, run everybody through how it works. And, Arizona is not like a lot of other states. If you get a marijuana charge here, that's a felony. That's not, you don't get a slap on the wrist like you get in California or Colorado, where it's totally legal. It's a big deal here. So we kind of, educate them on that. And before we kind of get into that, I share a little bit about my story. And when I talk about it, I call it my drinking career, because it was something that I was, very focused on. Like, alcohol for me was something that was always on my mind. I was thinking about it every minute when I was at the worst of my addiction. But when I talk about
on it, and you were probably proud of it.
It was, yeah, for a very long time. It was, when I would go like on a camping trip or something, I would take a picture of all of the booze that we were bringing on the camping trip. you know, and
Yeah.
I'd post it on social media and I'd be like, yeah, we're going to go get, you know, wasted all weekend up in the woods. And like, that was part of my culture. That was part of my persona is I like to drink hard. I like to party hard. And, you know, that was something that was kind of a big part of my life for a very long time. So when I talk about my drinking career, I'll break it up into 4 different sections. And I say in the first section, it's when you only have fun, right? And I talked about this this is kind of a repeat for you. You've heard me give this talk before, but the first part of it, it's just fun. And so I started drinking when I was in 5th grade. And until all the way up through high school, I kind of put myself in that first category where it was just fun. I really had no problems. You know, you're drinking with your friends anytime we could score booze or get somebody to buy us beer or, you know, sneak out of our houses at nights and go to the park and drink or something. Like, it was just fun for us. You know, we weren't really having any repercussions. It wasn't a big deal. School was easy. You know, I was showing up to soccer practice. And so I think a lot of people can sort of relate to that. It starts out as not a big deal, but then it progressed for me. And I moved from category 1 into category 2, where I was still having a lot of fun, but I started to see some problems rising up. Right. And, you know, this starts in high school when I'm showing up hungover to wrestling practice. You know, I'm missing certain events and things, but nothing catastrophic, still performing well, still getting good grades. And that kind of carried me up into college for a large part. I was a pretty good student and I was really focused on, you know, my life, but I was drinking very hard. I went to ASU, you know, it's one of the number 1 party schools, if not the number 1 party school in the country. And I took full advantage of that, man. You know, every moment that we got, we were drinking. I was drinking, but it was just part of the culture. You know, everybody else was doing it. Wasn't a big deal. And I started to see some problems when I went to law school after college. I started to kind of migrate into the 3rd category, which is
Now, during that second stage,
yeah.
did you ever think that it was a problem? Were there
No.
ever periods of time where you're like, yeah, I think I might have a problem? No, you were just complete denial. This is what other people are doing. I'm just having fun.
Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't, you know, I didn't. And I really don't think that even anybody in my life had kind of recognized that this might be a problem. You know, they would make passing comments, but it was sort of the normal thing to do. You know, when you're 22, 23, everybody was doing it. We were always liquored up. And, you know, that's just what we did. We would wake up, you know, first thing in the morning and drink all day, all weekend. And then I would kind of, you know, when you're younger like that too, your body bounces back really quickly. So I would be ready to go to work, you know, on the Monday morning. And so a lot of my activities, a lot of the problems that we see in categories 3 and 4 just weren't there yet. There were some of them, but they were just kind of simmering underneath the surface.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so when I went to law school, you know, it started to progress. And we always talk about this as a progressive disease. You know, it does get worse. And I totally experienced that when I was going to law school. And then shortly thereafter, I started to have more problems. You know, I went to law school, graduated, did well, passed the bar in Arizona, passed the bar in California, and started my law firm. We started our law firm in 2014 and was doing well, you know, performing well, you know, meeting all of my client expectations. Our firm was growing very rapidly. So, you know, many people would say, well, that's, you know, it's kind of a functioning alcoholic type of thing. You know, I don't know that. I mean, I certainly was doing some things, but my performance was dramatically diminished throughout that entire time. I started having problems that were popping up. I was missing events. I was making excuses to not go to things. You know, I was just dragging around the office and I was just not really enthusiastic about living life a lot of the time because I was drinking. And then, you know, to kind of answer
was there anything else besides drinking, or was it just drinking?
Just drinking. Yeah. I've never been a needles or a pills or, you know, anything like that. I just have never been into it. It's always just been alcohol. And it's been the one thing.
Luckily, right?
Luckily, super fortunate on that. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
I certainly, you know, I've kind of experimented with some things here and there. I had my wisdom teeth out and I had pain pills and, you know, I took the pain pills for my wisdom teeth, but I just didn't like it. Like it didn't hit me the same way that the alcohol did. So I just never got into that world, fortunately. My brother did, which I'll talk about shortly. But, you know, it was one of those things that I feel very fortunate. I never had to kick something that was maybe a little harder or a little bit more intense, or, you know, it's certainly more dangerous. You know, the fentanyl molecule is a very dangerous thing. You know, I just didn't fortunately, I didn't have to experience that or go through that. But it was, you know, it was a period of time where, you know, in category 2, you asked, did I have any indication that there was a problem? The answer in that category was no. In category 3, absolutely. I started to think, I do have a problem with this. I had a girlfriend who, you know, was really encouraging me to get involved in AA. I was going to AA myself, you know, kind of in and out of the rooms, in and out of the doors. And I always thought that I could control it. I had a better understand, you know, I was this type of like, you know, alpha male, high performer. I can conquer and do anything. I can control this thing. I can beat this thing. All I have to do is just figure out a system out of it, or I can, you know, just think my way out of this problem. And so I was trying to do that a lot. You know, I thought AA was kind of stupid. I thought these guys were really dramatic. You know, I would go to these rooms and everybody's like speaking a language I didn't understand. And, you know, I started thinking these people are, man, it's pretty weak. You know, why don't you just stop drinking? You know, why don't you just white knuckle this thing? And there was almost like a disconnect. I didn't realize that it wasn't almost about the alcohol. It was about these people dissecting themselves and going through their resentments and doing their inventory and making the amends and like clearing out what's going on in your mind. I just didn't, you know, I didn't recognize it at that stage. And so I was, you know, I was constantly just kind of in this state of turmoil where I would go on these binges, and then I'd say, okay, I'm done. I'm swearing off alcohol, and I'm just going to get back to the basics. I'm going to get back to my health, get back to my fitness. And so I was kind of, you know, riding that wave for years of just kind of a slow boil, a slow death, just kind of killing myself. And, you know, by all objective measures, we were doing pretty well, right? I mean, our firm was growing, business was good. You know, I was, you know, having issues with relationships with, you know, women, but who doesn't have problems with their relationships, right? So, you know, it like nothing was standing out where it was, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose my life. I'm going to lose my business. I'm going to lose my family. Like none of that was there yet. I was certainly having problems. I was missing things. I was, you know, not performing to my obligations. I'd make agreements to do stuff and then bail on those. And so it wasn't good. It wasn't the type of person I wanted to be, but it wasn't bad enough that it caused me to sort of sit back and look at things. So then, you know, I was probably in that problem, in that phase, category 3 for years, you know, through law school, through most of the founding of my law firm. And then when I am, you know, giving this talk, I say something happened that really shifted me into category 4, which is just problems, right? So you go from category 1, which is just fun, into category 2, which is mostly fun with a little bit of problems. Then you go into category 3, which is mostly problems with a little bit of fun. And then you go into category 4, which is, it's no more fun anymore. It's just problems, just dog pile, problems. And so in 2016, you know, what happened was, you know, throughout my entire life, I'm the oldest of 3 boys, and my middle brother is Joey. Joey's 1 year younger than me. He's got Down syndrome. And then Eric is the youngest. He's 3 years younger than me, and he's got and he doesn't have Down syndrome. He's just, you know, a normal kid. And so as we're growing up, you know, I'm going through those 4 different progressions, and I'm seeing myself sort of change from a cucumber into a pickle. And I'm sort of realizing that this progression is happening. And this entire time, Eric is going through the same thing. Eric's my youngest brother, and so he's going through the same thing. Now, he broke his wrist in middle school, and he was a big BMX biker guy and a football guy. And so, you know, we did everything together. I did a lot of that stuff with him. We did karate and Pop Warner football and all that stuff. I mean, we're very close. And in his progression, as he was going through those stages, he broke his wrist and he had to get a number of different surgeries. So they put plates in his wrist, and they, you know, probably, I don't remember the total number, but, you know, half a dozen different surgeries. And so he was in a lot of pain, and that got him started on the Percocets, and then the opioids and the Oxycontins, and, that whole class of drugs, it started him on that. And he got progressively worse. So he kind of went through the same categories that I did, and slowly got worse and worse and worse. Now, as many people know, once you start down that road, anybody in the sober community, recovery community, we know as soon as you hear that, what the next step is in the progression of that, right? It's heroin. And he had a number of, he re-broke his wrist. He worked at Discount Tire. And so part of their job is to take that torque, that lug nut torque, and crank it down until it clicks, and so that your lug nuts are on there. And he did that, and he exploded his wrist when he was doing that again. So, there's another thing. So constantly just dealing with pain, dealing with surgeries, and it was a big problem for him. So eventually he progresses into heroin. And meanwhile, I'm sort of on a parallel path. I'm going through my own progression, and I'm in still category 3 law school. I'm still thinking I can work my way out of this. I'm not particularly concerned about Eric and what's going on there, but I'm, he's living with me, and I'm taking care of him, and I'm really irritated that he can't kick this habit, and we're all trying to help. And I'm not really in recovery yet. I don't understand it. I'm still in this like naive category 3 where I can just think my way out of it or just solve it. Just stop using heroin, dumbass. What's the problem? Why don't you just do that? And meanwhile, I'm drinking myself to death, every other weekend or something like that in my little binges. So
at that point in time, you thought it was just the issue was drinking, the issue was drugs. You didn't realize that it was the behavior. You didn't realize that it was the trauma. You didn't realize that drinking and doing drugs was a way to soothe the pain.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even consider it. I thought I was a high functioning guy. Anything I set my mind to, I can go do. So this is just like any of those other problems. If your car is broken down, you take it to a mechanic and you fix it. That's kind of the logic that I was using to approach alcohol and drinking. And I never really stopped and asked the question, why am I drinking? Why am I doing this? What is this behavior coming from? I just never thought about it. I thought I actually went the other way. I would justify it. So I would say, hey, I'm allowed to go get blasted all weekend and just check out from reality. Why? Well, I got a law firm. I'm a lawyer. I've got all these employees. I've got plenty of money. I work harder than all of my friends. I've accomplished more than my friends. So if I want to go get blasted, who is it of anybody in my life to tell me when I'm technically more successful to them? This is what's going on in my mind, right? And it's a sick thought pattern, and it's something that I can't believe, I ever had going on. But I was very sick. I was justifying my own behaviors by sort of judging other people and measuring myself against them, which is not, it's not a healthy thing to do, right? I should be measuring myself against myself and against how I'm performing, not using other people as an excuse to justify my own bad behavior.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point. I was actually having a conversation with somebody yesterday. Her son is a 34-year-old heroin addict, and we're talking about options and treatment options and sober living homes. And I own Camelback Recovery, and our price point is higher than the average price for a sober living home. And she's like, I don't understand how somebody that's in a heroin addict would have enough money to pay for that. And it's like, just because a person has resources doesn't mean that they're not affected by addiction. You can be, to your point, be, from all appearances, successful. Money, cars, law firm, law degree, you're kind of like, you're living the life, and that brings with it a sense of entitlement, a sense of, I deserve this, I've worked hard, and I'm better than those people. And the reality is that you got the same issues.
Yeah, big time. And I really took advantage of sort of my accomplishments and used them as a total excuse to justify that behavior. And it was, what's funny, sort of the irony of that whole position is that I was truthfully, probably the most sick person of all of those other people. I was the one most messed up in every aspect. I was codependent. I was angry. I was unfulfilled. I had, poor relationships with a lot of people. I was destroying my body, destroying my health. So while I'm using all of these sort of, what I consider to be objective criteria to say, well, yeah, look at this. I'm a lawyer and I've got employees and I make this much money and I drive this car and I do all these things. It's like, all right, that's all a nice facade. That's all on the outside. What really was going on internally was a catastrophe. I mean, it was just a mess. I was just all spun around the axle and just totally out of sorts, but I didn't realize it. Probably somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that. And I understood, maybe subconsciously, that I was drinking to not deal with all of my problems or dive into my soul and peel back the layers of those things and really dissect what's going on there. I knew that was going to be hard work. I didn't want to deal with it. So I just relied on these other superficial, really meaningless accomplishments to just continue to do what I wanted to do, because I didn't want to go and do any hard work.
Yep. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah. And so I lived there for a long time. And, when I go back to Eric, and part of that story is in 2016. So before I get there, we spent a lot with Eric. We spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of, my mother's sweat and tears and blood, went into helping him. And we sent him to a number of different treatment facilities, some in Prescott. He did some sober living around the Valley. He lived with me for a certain period of time. I was trying to, kind of hold him accountable and stuff, but I did not have the tools at that time to help him. And so at one point, I actually threw him out of my house because he was doing drugs in my house. He was buying and selling drugs. And I, as his older brother, caught him, and he was stealing money from me. He was stealing things. I mean, he was like, the worst type of heroin addict that we all have been around. Right. And stealing and lying and, doing things that he should not have been doing in my house. Meanwhile, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. Okay. I already don't have any friends with law enforcement. They already don't like me or what our firm does. So
Right.
If my brother is selling and dealing drugs out of my house and I get implicated in that, that's a huge problem for me and my business and all that stuff. And so, here's an alcoholic myself, drinking all the time at this stage, telling my brother, hey, you got to get your act together. And when he couldn't, I ended up, throwing him out of the house. I took him to a friend's house on the West Valley, and it was a really hard day for me, but I thought, this had to be done. This is important because he's not getting it. So, all of that is sort of wrapped around my experience with my brother. And in 2016, he had just come out of treatment up in Prescott, and he was looking great. He was looking really good. We spent some time with him and my family, and he had put on some weight. He was really skinny. His skin was clearing up. He had these blisters and things on his hands, and he was really swollen. And so he was looking good. He was kind of turning a corner. And so family and we got him set up in an apartment in Phoenix, and he was there. We were, I was helping him move stuff in, move stuff out, getting him set up, getting him some independence. We're going to get him work, getting him back to work and all of that stuff. And things were looking good. Then on a Saturday morning, I was in bed. I get a phone call. It's probably about 9 o'clock in the morning. I am hungover, obviously, right, from the night before. Eric was no longer in my house, and I just used that Friday night to come home after a stressful week of work and just get blasted all night and watch Netflix and do whatever I was doing. And so I wake up Saturday morning. My mom's calling me at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm irritated. What does she want from me on an 8 in the morning on a Saturday? And I pick up the phone and, hey, Mom. And what I heard on the other end of the phone, I mean, it's scarred in my brain, and I probably should, do some EMDR or something to deal with it. But it was my mom on the other end of the phone and screaming bloody murder, screaming. I could not even make out any words other than just screams. And, I instantly sat up in bed, and I knew that something was incredibly wrong. And I finally hear her muster out the words that he's dead. She says that a few times, he's dead. And I knew immediately at that point that she was talking about Eric. And Eric lived about 10 minutes away from me. So I hopped in my car and I raced over there. And and he was dead. And my mom was sitting outside of his apartment. She was basically just kind of collapsed into a chair that someone had brought out for her. And she was just destroyed. She was devastated. So what had happened was she had told him that she was going to come over, or actually she didn't say she was going to come over, but she was going to check on him in the morning, and was getting some weird text messages the night before. And so she just felt uneasy about it, texted him in the morning. He didn't answer. And so she showed up there. My mom went down to his house, had a key, or his apartment, had a key, walked in, and had found him there hanging. He hung himself, and he had passed away that, the preceding night. So I got there right at about the same time the police were there. I told my mom, call the police immediately, I'm on my way. And so, police are there, I'm there, my mom's there, and we went through the whole deal. We were there all morning, and they did a good job taking care of us. As you mentioned, I have a show called Watching the Watchers, where I talk a lot about bad police and bad prosecutors and bad judges and things. But I certainly don't think that they're all bad at all. Not even close to that. But the interaction with the police officer was great. There was a paramedic. There's kind of a team that shows up that isn't really in any capacity to help, other than just to talk to you and just to kind of hold your hand and say it's going to be okay. So that team showed up and helped us. The police officer gave me a very good gift. I wanted to go up and into the apartment and see it, and he actually said, you don't need to do that. Basically he kind of talked me out of going up there, which was a really big gift to me. I kind of wrestled with that a little bit. Should I have gone up there and seen what he did? And I decided not to do that. My mom did, and she has spent a lot of time in counseling and treatment and EMDR and dealing with that trauma. And so that officer gave me a pretty nice gift. I didn't have to see that, but they did, wheel his body down on the gurney, and they, put him in the car and carted him off. And, for the next 2 weeks, I was pretty good. I was pretty solid. I was in survival mode. I have to take care of my mom. I have to take care of my family. And I did that. I was absolutely still drinking at that time. Everybody was drinking, right? The whole family was drinking. Everybody came into town, and everybody was just getting liquored up. And I was drinking for sure, but I was, some of that adrenaline, some of that survival instinct. I'm super close with my mom. She's the most important person in the world to me. So I was in protection mode. I'm the oldest son. I have to keep it together. We have to get through this. And so I did. And we got the funeral arrangements, all set up. We were Catholic, so we had the wake.
When you say you were good, like what do you mean you were good?
Well, I wasn't, when I say good, I guess I would say that I was performing what was expected of me. Like I was doing the duties that were necessary to sort of be a leader of the family. I'm the oldest cousin. I'm the oldest son. I was strong. I was supportive. I was sort of doing those things that I think were kind of expected of me to do. And I thought I did pretty well, all things considered. Like having just lost my brother who's super close to me, I kept it together, I would say.
So it's kind of like you didn't get to go through the grieving process. You didn't get to process the traumatic event. You just kind of stuffed it, which, it's like, okay, you did what you were supposed to do. Should you have, who knows? It's like, obviously you were able to hold it together, but I'm sure, we'll get to it because I'm sure that it affected you at a later time.
It did. Yeah. And that's exactly where we're going with it. Yeah. So I kept it together for 2 weeks, or more or less, right around that time. And then that's when I transitioned directly into category 4, just problems. You're 100% right. I really didn't deal with it at all. I kind of kept it together for those 2 weeks. And then for about the next 2 years, I was seeing a counselor sporadically. I was really cognizant of my drinking and how problematic it had gotten. And I was just sort of in this downward spiral for the next 2 years, just trying to sort through my grief, sort through that trauma. and work on myself. And basically that entire time I was drinking, and I was drinking badly at that point. You know, there would be these periods of sobriety. Like I'd go 3 to 4 months sober, and then I would just lose it. You know, something was triggering me that would cause me to just lose an entire weekend. Like gone, not even responsive to people. You know what I'm saying? Like I would drink myself off the face of the earth, and people would be missing me for 3 days, 4 days even, right? Where the hell is Rob? People would show up to my house. My mom would show up. My business partner, Ryan, would show up. People were checking on me because I was drinking myself to death. I mean, like literally to death. You know, looking back on it, I mean, I was drinking so much in such high quantities so frequently without any breaks that it is actually a miracle that I'm not dead. I mean, I was drinking that much, and it was becoming very concerning to my family. And in that period of time, I finally recognized that I needed some help, and I did an outpatient program locally here. And then I did, I went to detox and sort of like an initial phase of treatment twice. And then something happened in 2018 that clicked for me. I was at a detox house. My second attempt, I was at a detox house, and I saw something that was really, really kind of disturbing, that kind of shook me to my core. So it was at that time that I really read the big book. It like from beginning to end. I had read it probably 10 times, but I never actually read it. Right. You know, I sat there and I listened to it, and I opened it in the meetings, and I would read it, but I didn't get it. Nothing was clicking for me. And so I read it on that, at that second stay, and it started to make sense. It all started to kind of click, and I started to realize, okay, I now understand what these guys are talking about. It's kind of that burning bush moment, or that, you know, the light bulb goes off. It was one of those feelings. And then that was happening at the same time that something happened at that house that was just really horrendous. I was there, and I was probably like day 7 at this place. So I'm supposed to be stepping down into a different program. And they brought this kid in who was fresh off the streets, and he was about my brother's age, a couple years younger than me. And he was a mess. He had been living on the streets for like 6 months. And when I mean like living on the streets, like hadn't showered, not eating, you know, his clothes were just matted down with, you know, dirt and grime and bodily fluids and everything. I mean, it was, you know, a horrendous version of a person. I mean, this person was basically like the Walking Dead. You know, I mean, he was really, really in bad shape. And his problem was heroin, right? And so immediately I've got this connection with this kid, and I'm thinking, okay, like this could easily have been my brother, right? And I just see that. And so he comes in at night, and you know, there's no doctor. He's obviously going through some really, really bad withdrawals. He's covered in, you know, stuff. I mean, his smell was just, you know, kind of permeating throughout the entire house. And it's like it was really sad. It was kind of shocking to me. I've never seen anybody kind of up close and personal in that condition. And so this guy is going to be my roommate, actually. So the guy who is my roommate is no longer there. They're going to bring this guy in. So I don't have a lot of experience in sober living or recovery houses. I don't know how this stuff works. I go up to the house manager person, and I say, hey man, this guy needs like help. He's like, I don't know if he's alive or dead. He's barely breathing. You know, he's, you know, stinking up the entire house. He looks terrible. He needs help. What can we do for him? He said nothing. He said, nope, there's nothing we can do. Basically, they hauled him into that bedroom and just threw him in the bed. And they said that the doctor will be here the next morning. And so he got no attention. And I talked to the guy, the manager, about it. And he says, it's your roommate. You know, figure it out. Basically, you go figure it out. So I okay, fine. If I can help, I'll go help. So that's what we did. Basically, I spent that whole night with him. I took all of his clothes off, put him in the shower, and he was having these such bad withdrawals that he was screaming that the water felt like it was melting his skin off. you know, it was like melting his, like physically pulling it off. And he didn't know where he was. And he was really, really in bad shape. So we get him all cleaned up. I do some laundry for him, give him some of my clothes, and we get him all situated. I make him whatever I made him some dinner and stuff and a smoothie and all that. And we get him some food in him. We get some things in him. The next day he's basically out, right? I bring him some food a couple times a day, and I'm trying to take care of this kid. He sees the doctor. We fast forward a couple days, and he's back. You know, he's on his feet, and he's really doing well. You know, and he comes to me and he thanks me and he says, "Thank you so much." He was really aggressive with me during that night. He was really, don't effing touch me. Don't you don't know anything about me. Very aggressive. And, fortunately he wasn't in a position to put up much of a fight. So we got him through it, but he was very apologetic for that. And he was very appreciative. And it was kind of at that moment, in conjunction with reading the big book, in conjunction with being at this point in my life where I'm sort of at the verge of losing everything. You know, I was going to lose my family. I was fearful that I was going to lose my family. I don't think my mom would have ever abandoned me, but I was at that point where I thought maybe this is it. I thought I was going to lose my business. You know, my business partner was very upset. My staff, my team, people were missing me. Where is Rob? And so, relationships with, other people in my life were just disintegrating. And so all of these things kind of came together, and I started visualizing this could have been my brother, this kid who they just threw in a bed and said, good luck to him. Now, that could have been my brother. And then this was the first time where I got to be of service to somebody else. And it was an epiphany type of moment for me. I started to realize this is the formula. This is what it's going to take for me to start working through my own internal turmoil. And that was the beginning of the end of my drinking career. And it was very fortunate that, it all kind of coalesced into the same event for me. And I started going to AA meetings again. I found a men's group, which has changed my whole life. We meet every week on Tuesdays. We're meeting today at 5 p.m. We meet over at Scottsdale and Shea at the coffee plantation, right across the street from the fellowship. And that's been something that has, when I say changed my life, I don't say that haphazardly. I mean, that like dramatically has changed my life. I've been able to do a really deep dive on myself. And we talk about, peeling the layers of the onion back and cleaning up your side of the street and understanding who you are and why you are using these drugs or or the alcohol to escape from your own reality. And I've been working with them for 2 years, since 2018. And, my life has improved dramatically. Now I do these clean slate sobriety talks where I go into those treatment centers. And like I said, I give them that crash course on Arizona law, but then the main crux of the workshop is to help people clear their records. It's to help people who have been convicted of a crime or, have pending open cases, to help them clear that stuff up. Because what I've seen as a criminal defense lawyer, helping thousands of people charged with crimes, is that once you get that on your record, once you get a conviction, it's hard to reintegrate back into society. It's hard to get a job. It's hard to apply for housing. Even it's hard to get into relationships now. People will Google you, and if they see your mugshot or your criminal record, they may not want to go have coffee with you. Like it's a big deal. So the point of that, I started to realize that I have this weird intersection of things in my life. I happen to be a criminal defense lawyer. That was something I've been working on even before I recognized I was an alcoholic, but we're dealing with tons of people with drug and alcohol crimes. I lost my brother to suicide after, and he was high. There's heroin needles all over the place. And, I happen to also be an alcoholic myself. So I've got these 3 different things that are sort of intersecting with one another. And I put together that workshop so that I could go continue to be of service. And so as much as it is good for me to go and educate people about how the law works and about how serious things can get quickly if you're involved with any drug or alcohol crimes, it's also sort of it's keeping me connected to the rooms. It's reminding me that I sat in those chairs and that I could be back there very, very quickly. And then it's also, it's keeping me sober because it's allowing me to be of service to other people. I can go and do something productive with these skill sets that I've developed going through all of that. And it's been very rewarding. a lot better way to live than it is to go home and get blasted every weekend. So, I'm very fortunate. And I will say, you've been a big supporter of mine, of what I'm doing. And you've helped me with a lot of that. You've made some tremendous introductions to people to help me get this program launched. You've connected me, we're part of some networking groups, and we become friends. And I think there's that's critical to both of our journeys. It's how do we help each other along, as we deal with this.
Yeah, and I think speaking to clean slate sobriety, it's one of the things that you mentioned that I want to point. It's like you do clean. The purpose of clean slate sobriety is to help people clean up their record so that they can have a kind of a fresh start. But really, when it comes down to it, clean slate helps you. It's like being of service.
Yep.
And that's what I've learned. It's like the way that I'm going to be happy, joyous, and free and live a fulfilled life is by helping other people. And so you're using your knowledge, your education, your expertise to help other people. And really, it's like, as they say, AA is a selfish program. Like, yeah, the reason why we help other people is because I want to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. And it's something that I tell, every workshop. It's like, hey, thank you for having me here, because being here is going to help keep me sober today. And it's going to keep giving me the energy. So, I hope you get some value out of this talk, but if not, I'm going to. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's like the whole reason why we sponsor people is to help me stay clean. And so, it's just like leading somebody through the steps, doing service work, that's going to help me. Of course it's the appearance is that I'm helping them, but really I'm helping me. It's selfish. It's interesting the way that it works, but it's magical.
It is magical. We talk about it at our men's group. We talk about getting fortified. We talk about fortifying yourself. So one of the things that we ask, sort of the format that we follow, is back to basics. So we take one guy and we grind them through the steps quickly, like in 4 to 6 weeks. And the back to basics format it's super interesting. It goes back to, the early days of AA, when they had sort of too many people who needed to get help, needed to get in the program. And so what my understanding of this, and I don't know the history, if this is a wives' tale or whatever, but it's a good story because it illustrates a good point. But basically what would happen is the people who've gone through the steps, they would go into one room. So you kind of separate the people. The AA members who have a lot of experience, who've gone through it and have some time under their belt, they go into one room and they have their regular meetings. The other people who are not, who are new, who are fresh in their first 30 days, who've not completed the steps, they go into a different room where they work the steps, and they did it in a group fashion so that they could just like batch get these people through the steps quickly. So they would do it in a format where they would lecture about steps 1 and then 2, 3, and 4, and then they break them down, and they just grind everybody through the steps. And then once you completed the steps, you got your AA card, and you're a card carrying AA member, and you get to go into the other room. So we follow that same kind of format with our men's group. So we've got about 5 guys, 6 guys now, and we put a new guy in the hot seat. So they come and they go in the hot seat, and all 6 guys are focused on that one person. And the reason we do it is because, we say, if you work one-on-one with the sponsor, you can probably bullshit one-on-one, you can bullshit somebody, but 1-on-6, it's really hard to bullshit all of us. And so it's an intense type of meeting, and we grind them through the steps. We do the inventory. We hold them accountable to make their amends, and they do the steps. And this is what was, how I did them. And then when you're done, we talk about, the fortification. How do you get fortified? So we say, you're in the middle position, right? You're here. You need a sponsor. You need a group sponsor who's going to be in the forward position. And then you need somebody who's kind of less than you, right? Less time, somebody that you can sponsor. And the goal is to always be in that middle position. So you've got a sponsor on the front, and you've got somebody you're sponsoring on the back, and then you're braced on both sides, and you're fortified so that anytime you have that mental obsession popping up, anytime that you have those cravings popping up, you can just refer back to your fortifications. You can reach out to your sponsor when you need that help. You can reach down to your sponsee and help that person and be of service to that person. And then as a men's group, we've also built out this, this circle of men. And we talk about the importance of that. It can be a circle of women or a circle of, whatever. But this idea is that for many, many years, thousands of years, mankind has been creating these circles, and men in particular and women in particular would do it when the men would, rally up, put on their war paint, grab their spears and go hunting. The women would do the same thing, preparing the food, sitting around the fire, nurturing the children. And so these two circles would just appear, and it's a very powerful format, so that when anytime somebody's hurt, somebody's struggling, somebody needs some help, everybody just circles up, circles the wagons, protects that person. And it's one of the most, spiritual, just insane things that I've ever experienced, where you can be with a group of people who don't want anything from you. They don't want to sell you anything. They don't want to sleep with you. They don't need to borrow money. They don't need to, they don't need you to help them move a couch. Like, they're just there to help you through this. And like you said, like we talked about, to help ourselves through it, right? I'm going to help myself by helping you. Like it's almost difficult to experience a more pure form of love between another person than what happens in these AA meetings. And so I encourage people all the time to join our group, or if that doesn't work for you, find one that follows something similar.
Yeah, I think it's that kind of speaks to it's kind of like having a home group, right? Yeah. You have a few people that you're accountable to. Go to the same meeting every single week. You see the same people every single day, every single week. Those are the same people that you constantly are communicating with and you're connected to. Those people know your story. Those people know what's going on in your life. If you're hopping around from meeting to meeting, it's not a bad thing. There's no such thing as a bad meeting. There's no such thing as a bad meeting. However, experience is that if I go to the same meetings, I stay connected to the same people. Like, I'm being honest, because those people are going to be able to spot my bullshit. Whereas if I'm bounced under the different meetings, and the other thing you talk about is your men's group, right? And they have meetings and they have mixed meetings. I've had really good experiences with men's meetings, and it sounds like you're in agreement with. Why is it for you? Why is it important to be, I guess, a group full as opposed to a mixed group?
Yeah, it's I don't. It's a great question, and I don't know what the answer is. I think for me, a lot of it has to do with just being authentic. There's no pretenses in that group. Everybody's there. We all come from different backgrounds. There's some people who are very wealthy. There's some people who are young and in their early careers, and there's we just have a mix of everybody. We even have one guy who works at a bar. Okay, he's an alcoholic, but he works at a bar, and so we're dealing with these things, and it's raw. It's a little bit more raw. It's a little bit more authentic, in my opinion. And to be perfectly honest, about 60 to 70% of the problems that we talk about have to do with women. They just do. I've got problems with my relationships. Everybody in there's got problems with their relationships. And so we can kind of just come to terms with that and say, okay, this, one guy that we were working with was in a very toxic relationship, and that woman, that relationship, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a heterosexual, male to female relationship. You can be in a toxic relationship with anybody. You can have a bad business partner. You can have a bad mom, a bad brother, whatever it is. But, for the men's group, it's just been one of the things that our group has sort of evolved into is checking in on those relationships, because a lot of the time for at least me personally, when the people with the most power to sort of knock me off my balance are women that I love, that that I care about. They have the special power to push those buttons in a way that that sometimes you need some guidance from other men who can just come in and say, hey, that's ridiculous, right? Because they've got 30 years of experience, of relationship experience, that I don't have. So there's a lot of that mentorship going on. I mean, I'll be honest, we don't talk a whole lot about alcohol. We run guys through the program, through the Back to Basics program. We do the steps, but when we don't have any new guys in the hot seat, a lot of what we're doing is just checking in on each other. We're just making sure that, we're doing okay. Our relationships are good. Our businesses are good. And, there's been a little bit of a community there. We help each other. I'm doing business with some of them now. We're super close, but it's the importance of getting plugged in, because as you mentioned, you can go to all these different AA meetings, but you can hide out in AA meetings. You can go there and not do anything. I mean, I did it when I talk about that category 3 of me kind of dipping my toe in the water. So that's what I did. I went to a ton of AA meetings, but nothing stuck. And I was just hiding around from room to room. Anybody want to share? No. Anybody have any burning desires? Yeah, I got about 1 million of them. You want to stand up and share it? No, I'm good. I'll just leave at the end of the meeting and go back to my normal ways.
Yeah. Show up late, leave early.
Yeah. And but sort of tell yourself that you're doing something good. Well, I went to an AA meeting, so I'm working on my alcoholism. Not really. It requires a little bit more than just sitting in a chair.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I just want to mention, in my experience with a men's meeting versus a women's meeting, is if I'm at a men's meeting, I know that I can be more open and more honest. Men and women are different. Like, we're different,
Totally.
and there are things that I can share in front of a group of men that might not be appropriate to share in front of women. And not to mention, like, it's like, if I think a girl's cute, if I think, it's like, I might not be totally authentic. And so people have that same filter. They might not be totally authentic because there's someone of the opposite sex in the room that they think is cute, or that they like want to look good in front of. Or same thing for women. I mean, I know women that's all they do is they go to women's meetings because that's kind of their tribe, and that's what they do. Okay, so I want to go back. You talked about category 3 to category 4, and we know that you made some kind of half-hearted tests, or half-hearted efforts getting clean and over. But what did you do, like, this last time? Like, what worked? What did you do that really was like, okay, this, because you're on the other side of it now, and like, what was the difference?
For me, man, and it's not a good answer. It's not, it's not one that's kind of filled with hope and inspiration, but I had to hit rock bottom for me to get there. And it really took that. I was, I'm of the personality type where my mind is, I'm very stubborn. I'm very, overly confident, and I think I can solve a lot of the problems. So I needed basically everything to be on the verge of being stripped away in order for that to work for me. And we actually tell this to guys, and the big book, kind of references it. When we have new guys who come into our group, we ask them, are you on both knees? Are you ready for this? Because if you're not, this isn't going to work for you. It's just not. And we tell people, okay, if you think that you can think through, solving this problem on your own, and the book talks about it. Did you try drinking before 12, or only drinking after 12, only drinking on the weekends? Did you try milk with your vodka? Did you try only drinking socially? It kind of has a list of these different things. And it says, if you haven't tried anything else, if you think that there still is an opportunity for you to go solve this thing on your own, then go do it. Go keep drinking, go keep using. If you're smarter than this addiction, then go prove it. Go do it. And at some point, the point of that conversation is to tell people, go do it, because you'll be back here. Go get it out of your system, because we know that you're not going to be able to conquer this thing. But go try, give it every one of your best shots. And that, you know, that's advice that we give now, but that's essentially what I was doing. I was living that. You know, I spent those kind of 2 years from 2016 after Eric died to 2018, really grappling with that. You know, well, I can drink this weekend because I had such a successful week, or I don't have anything coming up for the next month, or I'm just going to, you know, this is my excuse. I can control it. Let me try again. And I would try again, and I would fail dramatically, miserably. And it would always just progress back into that thing. So, you know, we tell people, hurry up, go out there, go quickly, hurry up, get it out of your system, and then come back when you're ready. And for me, that's, you know, that's what it took. If there was anything that I would encourage, you know, I certainly would hope that there are people out there who can not go through that experience, right? If they can just go, you know, not hit rock bottom and say, I'm just going to really start working on this and start thinking through this. The answer for that for me was community, and it was service. It was getting plugged into a men's group and being as giving as you could possibly be to get integrated into that group, and then just continue to be of service. You have to find something to do, somebody to help. Anytime you're in a bad mood, anytime that you're feeling like drinking, just go be of service. And you're going to realize quickly that that's a much better feeling. It's a much better thing to do than to go bury yourself in a bottle.
Yeah. Tell me about that all good stuff, man. I really enjoyed talking to you. Tell me about your new book.
Yeah. So Beginning to Winning, how to fight your case and succeed in the criminal justice system. It just went live on Amazon. So, and I don't even have the hard copies yet. The hard copies will be here tomorrow, but I'm super excited about this book. It is something I've been working on for about a year, and it's really for people who've been charged with crimes. I don't talk a lot about sobriety in it or really any of that stuff, but it's a 9-step framework that we use here at our firm. We've helped thousands of people facing criminal charges, and we have a formula, we have a system that we use. And so in the book, I talk a lot about that system, about the 9 different steps that you need to start thinking about to succeed in your case. We also talk about 3 different principles that are in there that are going to help you make decisions. Part of the biggest problem in criminal cases is that people don't know how to make decisions about their case, and they don't know who to trust, and they don't know where to find good information. And, you know, they only see lawyers on billboards and TV commercials and on the side of buses, and that's who they call. And that may not be the best fit for them. And so it's got accountability tips, how to hold your lawyer accountable, how to file certain motions, how to start helping yourself help your case. And it's available now. It's something I'm super proud of. I'm excited to see what the response is, but it's kind of being of service. It's how, you know, I'm giving away a lot of information that I think a lot of defense attorneys wouldn't be particularly happy with me telling other people, but, you know, I want to be of service. I want to help the people who don't have access to hire a lawyer. They don't have, you know, $5,000, $10,000 to go help, you know, to hire somebody to help them with their DUI. I still want to give them a tool that they can use. So we're giving it away to anybody who schedules an appointment with our office, and then it's available on Amazon. It's like $17. So, you know, if anybody's listening is in the middle of a crime, or, you know, knows somebody, that book would be helpful for them. If they're interested in the clean slate sobriety stuff, that's all on cleanslatesobriety.org. I have a video of a presentation that I gave at a local treatment center. And then I have all the forms. So like if anybody has a case that they want to get cleared up or file a set aside or an expungement or whatever they want to do, tons of forms are right on that website, all free. Don't want your email or anything, you know, just download them and use them at your leisure so you can get that stuff cleared up.
Awesome. What a great service you guys are providing, because you're right. It can be a daunting task if you're in the middle of some sort of a court case. You're in trouble. You need to hire an attorney. You don't know where to go. You don't know how to find a ethical attorney.
Yeah.
So what a great offer, and it's free of charge. That's awesome. Robert, why don't you let people know how they can reach you?
Yeah. So I got a lot of stuff cooking all over the place. Our law firm website is 𝐿𝐿LawAZ.com. So 𝐿𝐿LawAZ.com. The Clean Slate Sobriety program is over at cleanslatesobriety.org. eric's.org. Those are both ways. I've been using Twitter a lot more. That's probably the fastest way to connect with me. It's Twitter at Robert Gruler ESQ. And then I also wanted to mention Eric's House. So I talked about my brother who has passed away. My mom, has started a foundation for people who have lost somebody like we did to drugs, alcohol, overdose, suicide, or other tragic deaths. So we've got some people who are part of Eric's House who've lost, their 14-year-old daughter in an ATV accident or something like that. So it's a community of people who are grieving, and it's almost like AA, but for people who've lost somebody to one of those things. And so it's a community over here in Paradise Valley. We actually have a house. We've got a labyrinth. They do all sorts of different modalities. They do, sound healing and Reiki, yoga, and spiritual mediums come and do readings. And we have a labyrinth that we walk, and all sorts of activities. We've got a men's group there and a women's group there. So, unfortunately in our community, I didn't drink myself to death. I could at any moment, but I haven't yet. And, I know your story is very similar. You've been through a lot, and fortunately you and I have made it, but many people don't, and they never escape this thing. And so Eric's House is available at 𝐼rcshouse.org. It's a community for people who are looking for a different type of support. So they can check that out also. Awesome.
Well, thanks again for your time, Robert. Really appreciate you. This was fun. And to everybody else, have a great day, and we'll chat with you soon.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Tim. Really enjoyed being on the show.
Okay.